Genesis says God created sea monsters. At least that is how some Bibles translate Genesis 1, verse 21. Others say great sea creatures. The King James Version says great whales. Behind all three is one unusual Hebrew word, tanninim. Elsewhere, the singular can describe a serpent, a dragon, or a monster in the sea. So what does Genesis mean here? Is Day 5 naming whales, mythic dragons, ordinary large animals, or something our modern categories do not quite capture? The answer is not that one secret species has been hiding in the verse. The answer lies in what Genesis does to the most powerful beings its language can name. It creates them. It calls the result good, and then it blesses the living world to multiply. To see why that matters, we will keep three layers distinct: what the passage says, what its ancient setting illuminates, and what later readers infer. Day 2 opened a realm between the waters and named it sky. Day 3 gathered the seas so dry land could appear. Day 4 appointed the lights that govern day and night and make time readable. Now the ordered world begins to move. The waters do not merely contain life, they swarm with it. Birds cross the face of the expanse. And for the first time in the Bible, God blesses living creatures with a future. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill. Listen for the movement from command to creation, to goodness, to blessing. Genesis chapter 1, beginning in verse 20. God said, "Let the waters abound with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the sky." God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed, after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." There was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. Command, creation, goodness, blessing. That sequence is already more important than deciding whether one English noun should be whales, creatures, or monsters. The opening command is deliberately abundant. The Hebrew repeats a root that means to swarm or teem. A wooden rendering would sound something like, "Let the waters swarm with a swarm of living creatures." The point is not one impressive animal in an empty sea. It is life in motion. Schools, shoals, things gliding, darting, rising, diving, and reproducing beyond any human count. The phrase translated living creatures is neh fesh kai ya, living beings. Here it does not map a modern scientific taxonomy, and it does not pause to divide body from soul. It announces animate life. The birds are described just as broadly. Every winged bird flies above the earth, across the expanse of the sky. Genesis is arranging the world by the realms creatures inhabit, not writing a field guide. Then, inside that great abundance, the narration slows down for one category. God created the great tanninim. The exact phrase is the great tanninim. The noun is plural. The adjective is great or large. Its wider biblical range is real. In Exodus, Aaron's staff becomes a tannin before Pharaoh. There the creature is serpent-like. In Ezekiel, Pharaoh himself is pictured as a great tannin lying in the channels of the Nile. A crocodile or river monster fits the image. In Psalm 74, God breaks the heads of the tanninim in the waters. In Isaiah 27, the word appears beside leviathun as the dragon or monster in the sea. That is why sea monsters is not a made-up translation. The word can carry that force. But context still governs meaning. Genesis 1 places these beings in the waters alongside every moving aquatic creature. It does not describe wings, fire, magic, or one named dragon. It does not identify leviathun, and it certainly does not give us a modern species label. Large sea creatures is therefore careful. It preserves the setting without pretending the word has no darker associations elsewhere. Great whales is narrower. The ancient Greek translation used broad language for great sea creatures, but Older English often rendered that Greek word as whales. Whales can illustrate the scale. They cannot exhaust the Hebrew. The honest answer is a range, immense aquatic beings, described with a word that can name serpents, dragons, and monsters in other biblical scenes. So why would Genesis choose that word here? Across the ancient Near East, the sea was more than scenery. In the Babylonian story often called Enuma Elish, Marduk wins supremacy through a violent battle with Tiamat and forms part of the ordered world from her defeated body. In the Uga Rit-Ik Baal cycle, divine kingship is also bound up with conflict involving sea. Serpentine monster figures belong to that broader world of imagery. The Hebrew Bible knows the same poetic language. Psalms and prophets can picture God crushing a sea monster, breaking the heads of dragons, or defeating Leviathan. That does not mean Genesis copied one particular tablet, or that every ancient people told the same story. The comparisons are older, wider, and more complicated than a one-to-one borrowing claim. But the contrast inside Genesis is unmistakable. There is no battle on day 5. God does not discover the great tanninim already alive in the deep. He does not negotiate with them. He does not defeat them in order to become king. God creates them. The same sentence places them beside every other creature with which the waters swarm and every winged bird according to its kind. Then God sees that the whole scene is good. In other texts, monster language can embody chaos, empire, or hostile power. Here, the beings capable of carrying that association are placed inside creation before they can become rivals within it. The sea may be immense. Its creatures may be beyond human control. But neither depth nor danger is divine. Genesis could have moved directly from the swarming waters to every aquatic creature. Instead, it names the great tanninim first. The text does not tell us why, so certainty would be false. But the effect is clear. Nothing is too large, too strange, or too feared to be attributed to God's workmanship. The 19th century Jewish interpreter Shadal made that point directly. He understood their extraordinary size as the reason Scripture begins with them. The great creatures, too, are the work of God's hands. Rashi's plain explanation identifies large fish in the sea. The Aggadic tradition he cites imagines Leviathan and its mate. Those are different layers of reading, and neither turns the verse into a zoological key. The verb also deserves care. Genesis says, God created them, using the same Hebrew verb that appears in the chapter's opening and later in the creation of humanity. That choice gives the line weight. But the verb by itself does not prove that the creatures are supernatural or that this local verse is explaining creation out of nothing. The safer observation is strong enough. The narrator explicitly makes God the creator of the beings a listener might otherwise fear as powers. If we stop with monsters, we miss the climax of day 5. After creating the water creatures and birds, God blesses them. This is the first explicit blessing in the Bible. The plants of day 3 bear seed. The lights of day 4 receive their offices. But the living creatures of day 5 are addressed with a future. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters, and multiply on the earth. The great tanninim stand inside that blessed world. So do the smallest creatures hidden within the swarming waters. Genesis does not picture goodness as a silent, empty, perfectly controlled landscape. Goodness moves. It multiplies. It exceeds the frame. And this blessing comes before human beings arrive to name animals, cultivate land, catch fish, or find any use for a bird. Life is first presented as God's good abundance, not as raw material waiting for us. The larger pattern now closes another pair in the creation week. Day 1 established light and darkness. Day 4 appointed the lights. Day 2 established sky and waters. Day 5 fills them with birds and aquatic life. Day 3 established land and vegetation. Day 6 will fill the land with animals and human beings. The firmament episode asked what kind of space the expanse creates. Day 5 answers what that space is for. Birds fly across its face. Living creatures fill the waters below. The boundary is not the conclusion. It becomes a habitat. That correspondence is a real literary feature. By itself, it does not settle how long the days lasted or how the sequence relates to modern science. What it does show is movement from prepared realms to abundant inhabitants. What then are the great tanninim? Genesis does not identify one hidden species. They are the great aquatic beings, named with a Hebrew word broad enough to describe serpents, dragons, and sea monsters elsewhere. Modern whales and crocodiles can help us picture immense water creatures. Mythic combat language can help us hear what an ancient audience might fear. Neither picture should be mistaken for a complete dictionary definition. The decisive information is what the passage says about them. They are created, not divine. They are living creatures, not uncreated chaos. They belong to a world God sees as good, and they stand inside a blessing that sends life outward to multiply and fill the seas. Genesis does not make the monster small, it makes the monster a creature. Human beings often confuse control with goodness. If something cannot be mastered, measured, or made useful, it can begin to feel hostile simply because it exceeds us. Day 5 gives a different scale. The deep is not ours. The great creatures are not tame. Yet their wildness does not place them outside God's order or blessing. That is not permission to romanticize danger. It is a reminder that creation's value does not begin with human ownership. Before humanity enters the scene, the seas are already full, the skies are already alive, and God has already called that abundance good. Day 6 brings life onto the land and then slows down for humanity. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. What does it mean to be God's image? And what kind of rule does that image authorize over the creatures made before us? That is the tension in Genesis 1, verses 24 through 31.